After the death of his mother, he lost his mind. For the next few decades, he killed, then assaulted, dismembered, and ate several female victims in order to save money on his grocery bill. Let's find out why he chose this murderous path to fulfill all his basic needs. This channel is for lesser known serial killers. If you're interested, I upload new content every Tuesday and Thursday. If you're ready, let's get started. 1933, in the country of Germany, Joachim Kroll was born. He was the sixth child out of 9 children. That's not a family, that's a street gang. His father was drafted into the German army, which left his mother to take care of their children together. The father was not mentioned again, so I assumed that he was killed or captured during the war. The mother took care of the family until her passing, which was in 1955. Throughout the years, Joachim would have these unexplained thoughts of hurting girls in various different manners, torture to beatings or the sexual assault. Joachim's mother was his go-to person if he had become confused or had any of these negative type of feelings. Think happy thoughts, sweetie. This left him feeling abandoned by his mother, and that abandonment turned into rage. Oh boy, everyone hide your kids. People that knew him alleged that he seemed to always be a little strange, so he was avoided. Joachim, now a 22-year-old man, was forced to fend for himself. After experiencing several days of hunger, he found a job as a toilet attendant in Dusseldorf, Germany. A toilet attendant? What the hell does that even mean? I'm sure that he didn't make much money, but it did prevent him from starving to death. As far as his lodging was concerned, that was another issue. Joachim found himself intermittently sleeping wherever he could find shelter. Eventually, he found meager work for a company by the name of Thyssen Industries. I wasn't able to find out any details on this job description, but he was able to earn enough money to get a small apartment. Joachim found himself lonely for female companionship. Later in the story, I'll share how he dealt with these urges for a woman's company, and it will shock you. That same year, a woman by the name of Irmgard Streichel was last seen alive in the suburb area of Ludenhausen. The following day, her body was found in a barn on the outskirts of town. The authorities believe that the killer lured the victim to the barn, assaulted, and then strangled her to death. Afterwards, she was then disemboweled. Pieces of flesh were found missing from the body. It was as if someone took a carving knife and removed flesh from the stomach in unique, disturbing shapes. This killer must have been trying to make his own puzzle pieces. The investigators were left baffled as to what purpose someone would make these cuts, then remove them from the scene. Years later, they would find out the gruesome truth behind these missing pieces of human flesh. A year later, a 12-year-old girl was found strangled to death and assaulted. The police assumed that this was an unfortunate, isolated incident perpetrated by an opportunistic killer. She had no cuts on the body, so it was assumed that it was unrelated to the previous homicide. The authorities hoped that this would be the end of the killing so that they wouldn't be held accountable for not capturing this killer. 3 years later, 2 women were found murdered in a similar fashion. Both were strangled to death, assaulted, and then disemboweled. The first victim was believed to have been killed by a local mechanic by the name of Heinrich Otto. The police disregarded his pleas of innocence and arrested him anyway. The authorities were forced to believe his story when the second victim turned up after his arrest. Realizing that they had the wrong man in custody, preparations were being made to release him. Unfortunately, Heinrich couldn't stand being accused for a sadistic murder that he didn't commit, so he hung himself to death while in jail. What was the most unfortunate part about this story is that over the next 2 decades, additional men were arrested, one of which committed suicide and the other pled guilty, but both were wrongly accused of each homicide. Each victim was missing large pieces of flesh. What was also found to be strange that there were additional pieces were carved out of the woman's buttocks and thighs. The police found themselves dealing with angry residents that wanted answers that the police were unable to provide. 9 additional young girls and women were found murdered in similar fashion. One young man, who happened to be the potential victim's boyfriend, surprised the killer during one of his attacks. The girl survived, but the killer managed to murder the boyfriend during the assault. In 1976, the last victim was a 4-year-old girl by the name of Marion Ketter. One day, she was playing outside near her home when an unidentified man ran up to her, snatched her off her feet, and took off running like he was carrying a football. The police in the neighborhood searched door to door, asking residents for any information about the missing young girl. When the authorities went to one home, the occupant told them that he spoke with his neighbor. The unidentified man asked his neighbor why the drainage pipe was clogged in his apartment. The neighbor seemed agitated and responded with one word: guts. And then the guy just abruptly walked away. The police went to the neighbor's apartment and witnessed a horrifying scene. Located inside was the mutilated body of the 4-year-old girl. A foul stench was coming from the kitchen where food was being cooked in a pot. When they looked inside, a child's small hand was simmering in boiling water. Joachim Kroll was immediately arrested. During the search of the apartment, they looked in the sink and found that the child's intestines were sticking out of the drain. When the refrigerator was opened, pieces of the child's body were placed into separate containers. Joachim was taken to the police department and interviewed. During the interview, he confessed to 14 murders over the course of 20 years. Joachim also admitted to sexually assaulting the corpses, and then afterwards, as a finishing touch, he would then masturbate over the bodies. When asked why he killed these victims, he stated that groceries cost too much, so he saved money by cutting up the bodies and preserving pieces for food. So this fool chose to cut up people over cutting up coupons. He was ultimately only charged for 8 homicides, sentenced to life imprisonment. He died in 1991 of a heart attack. If you enjoy more stories, click one of the suggested videos above. God bless and stay safe.